Okay, we're now recording. So we're going to start with the Rick and Morty API. And that's one of my favorite ones. If you've ever seen my YouTube channel, I've got, I don't know, dozens of these up. But it's mostly just there because it is relatively easy. It's one of the better structured APIs, and it gives me a chance to show you something very consistent between the presentations. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my home projects folder, and I'm just going to see. I'm going to make a new one for just going to call this sprint one, and no information in this directory at all. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a couple of new files, and I'm going to do that by using touch. Let's see if I can increase the size a little bit. Okay. So touch is going to make a new file. We're going to do index.html, and we're going to do index.js. So if I type ls, you can see we've got an HTML file and a JavaScript file. I'm going to open up VS Code. And we can kind of start getting rolling. So I'm going to show you a lot of very common patterns that I've run into. So if I wanted to generate an HTML file just from scratch, I can type exclamation point and then tab, and it gives me a very fast, pretty accurate HTML file. It's already got the viewport and everything, so it's going to be responsive. I'm going to type in a little title, and then inside of this body, I'm going to want a place to mount my components to. So what I might do is a container. Oh, come on. And so we're going to do a div class container, and this is basically just going to be the HTML file. Oops. Sorry, I'm going back and forth between a Windows keyboard and on a Mac and a Windows keyboard on a PC. And the mappings are a little bit different, so you might see me hit the start button a few dozen times. So I'm going to go ahead and just save this. And we're just going to do a console log in our index.js file and do our normal hello world. So now we're going to need to still connect this to the index file. But for right now, all I'm going to do is I'm trying to get this running with live server for right now. And again, in the sprint, you won't be running live server. You're going to be running parcel, which is the npm run start. And you'll need to figure out your axios from there, which is, follow the directions type stuff. With this, what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to connect in the JavaScript file, where in the sprint, you won't need to do that. It's already connected for you. If I go over here to the console, you can see that we don't have anything. Let's see. You can see that we don't have anything in here for any console messages or anything else. So what we can do is we can add in a script with a source, and we're just going to do the current directory index.js and just leave it empty. So if I save this, you can see that we've got our hello world from our JavaScript file. And now I technically don't need this HTML file at all, other than I need to know that it has a class of container for when we do our selector. So let's go ahead and get a selector in here, and we'll start doing something more interesting. So let's say that we have a new variable named container. You could call it whatever you want, and we equal this to document dot query selector. And we're going to be wanting to pass in the same thing as what you would use in CSS. So in this case, it's a class, so it's going to be a period container. And I can console log this. And if we go back over here, oh, we have a null. Maybe I don't have a container. Oh yeah, so that's the other thing that was where I was going with this. So if you'll notice, we have this this document query selector container. And I'll go ahead and save that again. And you'll notice that it's giving us a null. That means that the script ran before the HTML did. So we have the script source index.html or index.js, and this is actually technically running before it's rendered any of this here. So like in a lot of old programs, you might see like this script tag down here. And you can see now it's giving us a class container. Nowadays, we kind of do something called a defer. And again, this is more information than you really need to know. But yeah, now that defer still works exactly the same way as moving this to the end. But it allows it to run the script at the end and in whichever order you had them in up here. So if you have more than one script, you can put it in the head. That just makes a lot more sense to have it inside of the head than in your body or wherever. It's considerably cleaner to know that it's up at the top. So that the defer is mostly there for organizational purposes, making it look pretty, that kind of stuff. So as for connecting in axios, what I can do is I can type npm axios, and this is going to give us a page at the npmjs.com that goes to their axios package. And normally you would be doing like npm install axios or something like that. That sounds like something you do on the sprint. For this, just out of the time considerations, I'm just going to be using a content delivery network. So we're going to use unpackage just because we can. We're going to copy that and paste that into our head. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow us access to Axios without using any import statements or anything else. And this is, again, these two lines here are something you probably won't need in your sprint challenge. So if I wanted to gain access to Axios, the type of information that I'm interested in getting back is going to be from our Rick and Morty API page. So rickandmortyapi.com. If I go into the docs, you can see that they have like this character schema, and all a character schema is just saying, hey, what are you expecting back? What's the shape of the data? If I wanted to get like a single character, I could just copy this and paste it into here, and it'll give me the character that I'm interested in. So like if I go to like character 42, it's a human with a giant head. So not a lot of information on this guy, but you know, he's there. Or if I go back to character 1, you can see it's Rick Sanchez. He's been in like a lot of episodes. Apparently he must be one of the main characters. And so this is all that. When anybody says a schema, you'll hear shape, you'll hear schema, you'll hear all kinds of things. All they're talking about is what can I expect this data structure to look like? So in this case, it's got an ID of 1, it's got a name of Rick Sanchez, status is alive, etc. All of these fields should be in here and pretty well populated with something. So if we go back over here, you'll see this this character schema. So ID, name, status, species, type, gender, etc. All of these are expected. So let's use this this right here, this web address right here, and we're gonna get this information from Axios and just start logging it out onto the console on this page before we even start generating anything. So what we can do is we can do an Axios get. And a get request is just like I'm on a web browser. And I type that into the URL bar and hit enter. It's going to give me back the same basic information. So what I might do is, if I have a request that comes back clean and it comes back with data, I can do a .then, and we'll have a response that comes back, and we're going to pass in a callback here. So it's going to run the callback, and it's going to be passing in information that we're just calling res at this point. So if I console log what Axios is giving us, which is res, and I save this, you'll notice that we've got, I'm going to refresh. We've got this this huge object here. So we've got a res.config, res.data, res.headers, res.request, res.status, res.status test, just a bunch of stuff. But the only information that I'm really interested in is this res.data. So you'll find that's the most common thing for you to get back is res.data. If I console log this again, I'm going to refresh just out of habit. You'll notice that this is giving us an object because we've got curly brackets. So I'm going to make that bigger. There we go. Don't need to know what's new. Because you have this curly bracket here, this is saying that you've got an object coming back. So that's an individual character in this case, which is fine. You know, that's something you might need to know how to do. So let's kind of play with that a little bit and see what we can get. So we have this container on our index.html, but there's no structure in here. There's no, you know, header, footer, main, sections. There's nothing in here. So we can add a section in here just by making a I can type today. So we're going to do a document.create element, and we're just going to call it a section. So this is making a new variable called section inside of our document.create element. Or document create element is saving a new section to the new variable section. And if I wanted to make it so that it's inside of our container, so if I go back over here to elements and I look in body, you can see this div class container has nothing in it. If I want to append that as a child, I can just do container.append child and then pass in section. If I save this, you'll notice now we have a child of section inside of here. So what if I wanted to make a card inside of the section? What we would do is we would make a component. And basically all a component is just a function that can be called multiple times. So you're trying to make it so that you don't have to type all this stuff out 50 million times anytime you get a new character. So like if I went to character 2, I wouldn't want to have to type out all of the information again. It's just another way of us being lazy and getting paid lots of money to do so. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make a new function. So I'm going to do the arrow function with this because it's more interesting to me. And we're going to call this card maker. Why not? We're going to set this to a new arrow function. So card maker is the variable name, and we're setting it to a new function. Now, we probably want to pass something into this card maker, like some data, maybe. We don't know what type of data that is yet. So let's console log our data. So what if we were to run the card maker right now? So card maker, and we're going to pass in res.data. Since that's what we've console logged up here, that's probably what we want to put into our card maker. So now what this is going to do is we're just passing in res.data. I'm calling it data. It doesn't really have to be anything. You can call it, you know, banana if you'd like. This is your name since it's your function. Same thing with this function. It doesn't have to be called res. You can call it result. You could also call it banana if you want. It doesn't really matter. Banana just doesn't make any sense from a semantic point of view. So if I save this, all we're doing is we're taking that console log and we've moved it over to here where it used to be above here. So not much of anything other than we're now copying the function that is our component generator, which is called card maker, out of this then, so we don't have to like do a bunch of stuff in here. It just makes it a lot more readable more than anything. So if we go back over here, we look at our console, it's still working, still giving us our data. In this case, it's called banana. So banana.created is whatever date that is. Banana.gender is male, that kind of stuff. So now that we have some sort of idea of what type of information that we want, what we can do is we can start making a card. So let's do an article. So we're going to do a create element. We're going to call this an article. And then I'm going to return, return card. Geez, losing my mind. So what this is going to do is this const card equals document create element article. When this returns this card, it's just going to return an article element here, but it's not going anywhere right here. So we might want to do something like section.append child, and then wrap card maker in as a argument. So what's going to happen here is it's going to execute card maker with res data. Res data becomes banana. Console logs out whatever data we had passed into here. It makes a new element called article, saves it to a variable called card, and then we're just returning it straight to this append child. So the section append child is then going to append whatever card has in it at this time into our section in this document created. So if I save this, you'll notice now we have a container, a section, and inside of that we have an article. Not particularly exciting yet, but we're getting there. This is where we get to start playing with some data. So I would imagine we would want, I don't know, maybe some sort of a header so that we have a general idea of, whose card it is. So maybe we'll do a const h2 equals document create element, and we're going to do an h2 and maybe an image. I can type. And then maybe a paragraph tag. So something like that. So we've created these, but we've never appended them to the card. So this one, we might call this, our, and we might call these children. So we've created these, but we've never appended them. So now we've got to append child. And I'm just gonna copy this a couple of times since I'm being lazy. And I'm gonna do h2, image, and paragraph. I'm going to save it and see what we've got inside of our elements. So if you'll notice, we started off with a document that only had a container. We appended a child to that of section. We appended to that an article. Inside of that article, we appended three things: an h2, an image, and a paragraph tag. So there's still no content on the page. So let's take a look at banana here. So we've got banana.name. So that might be a good one to use for our h2 text content. So what we can do is we can just do h2.text content. And we can equal this to banana.name. Let's see if we get Rick Sanchez. Now we've got Rick Sanchez. So if I inspect this element, you'll notice it put in here text content of Rick Sanchez inside of the H2. And when we get into the image, there's some nice little shortcuts for this. So like we got image.source. And we can just equal this to banana dot I think it's not image. Let's go and look back over at the console. So yeah, dot image. And if I just save this, we get an image, but there's no alt tag to this. So an alt tag is pretty much required for anytime that you're dealing with an image, because if you have somebody with a screen reader, you want to tell them exactly what the image is, because they'll know that there's an image there, and if they don't have an alt tag, they'll get irate and the world will end. So we're going to just do banana.name. And typically you won't put in, picture of Rick Sanchez, because they already know that it's an image. So their screen reader will say image Rick Sanchez. Just kind of nice. And then for a paragraph, we could probably do something kind of interesting. So what we can do is paragraph.text content. And I'm going to use backticks with string interpolation because I don't feel like concatenating today. So we're going to use the backticks, which is the one above your tab key. $ curly brackets breaks you out of that text and allows you to inject JavaScript inside of here. So we'll say banana.name is a banana.species. Sorry, I need to do curly bracket here. Yep, no, it was not a curly bracket. There we go. Is a human. So it's, we'll go ahead and save that. And no. Let's see what we broke. Text content is not a function. Why not? Oh, yeah. Text content is a property. So you're going to do text content equals, not wrap it in parentheses, because you're not actually running anything. So Rick Sanchez is a human, and we can even do more information than that. So we can do is a male human who is I believe he's still alive. Yeah, so now it says Rick Sanchez is a male human who is alive. So it generated that from the data that we passed in. So if I wanted to go to, say, Morty, for example, I could go to, you can see Morty Smith is there. And if I go, I think Summer is third. I always forget. Yeah, Summer's third. Fourth, I believe, is Beth. Yeah. And fifth is Jerry. So all I needed to do to generate new data was change my axios input. All 5 of those are alive. So if I go to, say, character 42, you can see there's a Big Head Morty. Big Head Morty is a male human who is unknown. We don't know if he's dead or alive. Go back over to Rick. Just like that. So if I wanted to get a list of all of these characters, they have get all characters. And you'll notice that they just get rid of HTTPS, Rick and Morty API character. And if I backspace over this, you'll notice that the data structure changed. So now it is still an object, but there's no information from it. So let's see what happens in our code when we get rid of this one. Undefined. Undefined is an undefined who is undefined. Obviously, there's some problems there. The type of information that you got is different. So remember before, this information was an object with the shape of data here, and it was pretty consistent, right? All of them have this kind of information inside of here. So what we're seeing now is a different shape of information. So we've got an object that only has 2 keys, info and results. And if you look at, let's see if I can get this to zoom in, of course not. Yeah, it's not letting me zoom in, whatever. But if you'll notice, this is an object info here, I'm gonna have to reload that, aren't I? Yeah, it did make it larger. It just didn't like it. So if you'll notice this info here, we've got a curly bracket and it's got some information in here, and this could come in handy maybe a little bit later, is you have a count of how many characters they have, how many pages it takes up. Great, 42 pages, my favorite number. The next page, that could come in handy, and the previous page. Okay, so that's handy, but that's not the information that we want. Now, if you notice this one, this has square brackets, so it's a list of objects, in this case, with the shape of data that we want. So what we can do instead of just this section append child and a bunch of information that we have in here, our res.data is now an array. So our res.data dot results is an array. So we can just do res.data.results, and we can either map over it, which is fine, I guess, or we can for each. Just trying to use one of these shortcuts. And on each one of these are all characters. Character object. And what we might do is for each one of these characters that's in that array, we just section append child that, and we send in the character object. So now we're able to loop over 20 characters at a time because it's how many are on a page, and it should just generate them. And it does. Any questions so far? Did I run everybody off? Let's see here. No, there's still people here. You guys can come off mute and tell me what.
I mean, I'm all
what if
set
we
to
need
go.
to get the like the first 5 characters instead of getting the all characters?
So like the first 5 characters, if you only
Yeah.
wanted to get 5? Was that what you were saying?
Yeah, there's a way to do that.
Yeah, there's definitely a way to do that. So what you would do in that specific case is you would probably want to do something instead of a for each. You would probably want to actually use a loop for that. So let me just comment this out for a second. So you might do a for, and we'll do let me see. I believe, yeah, because it's an array, we're going to start with the 0. It's been a little while since I've had to write a for loop. And we're going to do, say, less than 5, and then I plus plus. And let me see. I'm just going to look out because I always forget the directions on my my logic on the second argument. So I'm pretty sure we have less than on that specific one. W3 schools. Yeah, it's less than. Okay, so I got it correct. I still have to look this stuff up. So what you would do here is instead of doing a card maker character object that doesn't exist in an in a for I loop. What you would do is you would do res.data.results and then square bracket I. And that would give you your first 5 results, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But typically in most APIs, you would send them how many you want per page. And this API isn't robust enough to do that. And let the API give you that information back, because they are giving you all of that information, all 20 at a time.
I feel like Casey did something with the URL earlier today. When
Yeah, it
he
depends on the API.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so like the API, this specific API, I don't believe has any advanced pagination. So they've got, let's see here. Yeah, I think they just have like filters, but I don't think they've got anything where you can do, you know, which page you want. You can also get multiple characters if you comma separate. That's something else they'll do. But that's kind of outside of scope. But yeah, that's pretty much it for like the, you know, looping over and making a component. You know, this is typically the preferred way, and then this right here would be something that I don't ever, that's like an edge case that you know, would come up in like in a job interview or something, you know, not necessarily something that would actually, you know, be beneficial to anybody. Typically an API, if you want to be able to limit 5, you would tell them that you want a limit of 5, you know, at a time or something, 5 per page. On this one also has a pretty interesting API when it does come to pagination. Pagination? Better than pagination, I guess. So you've got info. And if you notice, it already gives you this link here. You know, our next is, you know, page 2 or something. So like if we wanted to, you know, put this into what do you call it? Like a function, then we could probably pass in that information into a function. So we'll say, we just call it page, why not? And we're going to call this a standard arrow function. And we're going to just move your axios in. And I'm just using the Alt key to get it to move up. If you're on a Mac, it's the Option key, pretty sure. And we could just pass in, say, like this information here. We're going to pass in a string of character. Oops. And we're just going to say URL and delete this, call it URL. So that'll be our base URL right there. So if I save that, it shouldn't have broken anything. Yeah, we're still good. So let's refresh. Yeah, so that's I just refactored this into a function so that I can pass in different information based off of this. So what I might do is yeah. If I wanted to say make like a header, for an example. Yep, that only that. Of course, the current one create an element, and we're going to call this header. And we'll do a append child, the header in there. Let's just make sure that this works. And we've got a div class container. We have a header and we have a section in here. So header is empty, and we might be able to put in, say, some sort of a navigation based off of this. So that we have a header. What we might do is make a function, and we'll call this like buttons or something. We'll have a previous and a next. So remember, we can still get more information out of this res data results. We want res.data.info. So if we look at the information coming out of this res data info, where is it? We have a next, so res data info next, res data info previous. So we'll just console log next prev. And we're going to run the buttons. We're going to be passing in something like that. And then this is all gonna turn into a mess because that's just how it works. Yeah. So you'll see that we have null for our previous, and then page 2 is our next. So if we just put in character, pretend that we went to the next page, page equals 2. I save it. You'll notice that now it has 2 pages. So we've got our previous page here and our next page here. So page 1 and page 3. So if I change this back to page 1, and we look at the information, it's only going to have a null there. So what we might want to do in this buttons is make a next and a previous button. So we're probably going to need to wrap this in something, since you can only return one element at a time, and we might as well call it nav. So okay, so we've got this nav being returned, and we're probably going to want to put it into, say, our header, for example. So we're going to append child that to header. So, either. Nope, wrong button. Where did I put that? So whatever gets returned from buttons is going to be appended to header. And before we do anything major in here, we're just going to put in a nav, and we're not doing anything with previous or next. And we're going to check in our elements to make sure this header has nav, which does. Next thing we might want to do is create a button. we'll create two buttons, previous and next. Probably want to put some content in there. So okay. And let's see what we blew up. Console. Previous has already been declared. Yeah, we already named it here, didn't we? So we'll call this prev button. And next button. All right, so we haven't appended it. Let's do that next. So we'll do nav dot append child prev button, and we're going to do nav next button. Okay, so we have these two useless buttons. They do literally nothing. So what we will want to do is we're going to want to make a click event. So let me see. I'm going to have to look that up. I've already forgotten. Brain's gone. So we're going to do yeah, so we're going to add an event listener click with an event inside of it. And so what this is going to do is this is going to run a piece of code when we tell it to run it. So if we do an add event listener, we tell it what type. We pass in a function that does what we want it to do. So no, I don't want a nav. I want a previous button. And we'll add in another one. So this will be our next. Okay, so if I go back over here, we should have a button that at least does something. So if I click on next, it says next, previous, it says previous. So we're about to run into some really weird stuff. So we've got a URL. And what we're going to do is we're going to start putting in some information into this function, this page function, and we're going to be getting new information without clearing out any of the old information for right now, just to show that it will technically work and it will append it to the end. Not the behavior that we want, but I'll show you a way of at least erasing it temporarily, even though it's not totally best practices. But a lot of this stuff is taken care of through React. Once when you learn React, this is like going back in time, literally 20 years. So you can still make a lot of money doing this stuff. It's a little different. So what we can do is we could just call page with the information that we passed in. But we want to guard this. So we want to say if previous is equal to null, because remember, in here, our previous is null. We don't want to be able to do anything with that. So if previous is equal to null, then we want it to, we'll do it this way. We want it to run this page previous. And same thing as if there is no next. We want to do page next. So I save this and I click on next. This is either going to blow up spectacularly, or we're going to see that this list is now 40 long. So Answer My Eyes Johnson's the last one. If I click next, it did not do anything. Let me see here. So I'm going to click on next. Yeah, it didn't do anything. So page next. Put the catch on this right quick. Something wrong here. So basically, if something goes wrong in the axios call, if you have a catch, it'll do whatever the catch does. So console log, output a neat little flashing pop-up thing that says something broke. And yeah, it didn't do anything. It's supposed to though. Let's see here if I can figure this out. One moment. Yeah, see this? It did send information in here because it said something wrong here on the previous, so it shouldn't be doing that. So we need to say if it's not equal to null. Again, my logic is going. All right. Let's see, this will probably fix it. So we'll refresh. If I click on next, yeah, now it added in and my logic backwards. It's the second time in a row. So there's ants in my eyes and there's page 2. But we don't really want it to have 2 pages worth of stuff. We want it to literally go to the next page. So what we might do instead is we might break it in a way by doing like a text content. So what we do is section.text content like that, and that's going to erase everything in there. It's also a massive memory leak in certain circumstances, but we all use supercomputers and this is for fun. So we'll go ahead and refresh, go to the top of the page and hit next. And let's see if it deletes it and then re-adds it. Oh, it does, but we get a re-render of this, our buttons. So we also need to delete our buttons. So, that's going to be even harder, isn't it? Yeah, let me see here. So this is going to pin child buttons. Yeah, it's in header, isn't it? So we could just, we could also clear out header here. So section and header. I can type, geez. All right, so let's go and refresh this. So now if I click next, cut 42. Now it goes next, next, next. If I go previous, nothing happens on previous. So we probably want to make it so that there's a little bit better UX on this previous button. We could probably disable it. So if we wanted to disable something, specifically a button, what you can do is you can do this in an if statement or a ternary. I'm going to do it in an if statement because it's just easier for my brain to think of. And we're going to do that same previous is null. Then what we can do is we can do priv button dot disabled equals true. So I save this. You'll notice the previous button can't be clicked on. The next button can, and then whenever you go next, it destroys everything on the screen and repaints the screen with previous. So, and the same thing happens for null. Or for next. So we could also test the next button by clicking 42 times. Or what we can do is we can set our first page down here to be, say, 42. You'll notice that now we can't go past this page. Or better above. But I can go previous. So that's a good way of testing. Refresh, goes back to page 1. And then I guess we could probably put in some CSS style, make it so it's not so horrible looking. So we now have a CSS file. We can link our CSS file. Oops. So we have a class container. We've got a header and a section. We've got articles. So let's style the articles. I'm pretty happy with the previous and next button. They seem to be pretty decent. I could probably center them, I guess. But yeah, let's go into the section and maybe make them a little bit more interesting. So it'll display flex, lines them side by side. And we could do some flex wrap. Yeah, it's starting to get there. Maybe put some space between for justify content. I'll do space evenly on that. So now when we shrink this down a little bit, they'll be relatively well spaced. Pretty close at least. And maybe under article, do some, well, we'll just do an image. We'll round the image. We'll do like 30%. There we go. Now let's try a little, try 20%. Yeah, that looks okay. Just in case you're wondering, there's a heat wave. All right, so any questions so far? Any questions, concerns? I know I just went over a lot. You guys can come off mute. Oh, I got a thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm all set to go.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else have questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Brian.
Excellent. I guess I'll go ahead and stop recording.